They were spirited. There's no rush that you can see. And so as a coach, you kind of take it with a grain of salt to a certain degree, but it's good because when something happens, you can shake it up a little bit and remind them that this is no picnic that we're about to embark on.
Jeremy was in here earlier saying that part of the reason he came here was conversations with you. A couple other teams were coming after him. What did you say? What can you share about those conversations, and what do you think about his addition to the team?
Well, I won't get specific in the conversation, but when you look at Jeremy, you like his size right off the bat, and especially for a forward. OG is of that size, but nobody else really is of that size. And then you look at his versatility. Over the years, he's been able to guard 1 through 5, and so to have that versatility on that end of the floor is huge, and especially if OG's out. We're a lot smaller if a guy like OG or Josh, or they both are out. And then his energy, his physicality, all those things that don't necessarily show up in a stat sheet, in my opinion, are welcomed by any team. And we were lucky to be able to get it.
What kind of role?
I'm not 100% for sure, but I do see a role for him because of the things I mentioned. And I say, well, I'm not sure how many minutes he'll play. I plan on trying to use him. And hopefully we can get to a point where he's versatile enough to play 1 through 5 for us. And, our system is a little different because 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all interchangeable, so you got to kind of know all those spots. And then that 5th spot is a little different because it's different than the other 4. And so we'll see how quickly we can catch him up to speed, but he's done a pretty good job so far.
We started with like a 10-man rotation. Is this
we could. Right. We could. Again, I don't want to say 100% yes or 100% no, but he definitely adds the ability for us to be flexible.
He talked about adding defensive versatility, but also mentioned toughness and like a nasty streak on defense. Jose kind of brings that too. Is that kind of getting those two guys? What do you think that does for your team? Is something that was needed?
Yeah, and again, anytime you can add that to your team, you add it to your team, and especially if they bring other things to the table. And, Jose brings a level of quickness with the basketball, especially that we hadn't had. Jeremy brings a level, not just of what you just said, but at that size, his ability or knack for rebounding, his ability to get out and transition, those types of things. He can handle the ball. Even in San Antonio, they try to play him at the point guard position a little bit. So those types of things at that size, when you start saying, hey, that player has some nastiness or some physicality to him, that's a pretty good thing to have.
After the break against, obviously, the Pistons, the number 1 team in the conference.
Yeah.
Given what happened recently in Detroit, does this game have any extra meaning to the guys? You feel that at all?
Yeah, it should. They didn't just win the game. They beat us pretty bad. Mm-hmm. And so for us, and again, I don't like to say that this game is more important than the next game. Every game is extremely important, but there comes a certain point when you're in competition. If the wins and losses are as lopsided as those 2 losses, that should shake you up a little bit. And at the end of the day, if we win tomorrow or win the next 2 games or how many games we play them, that doesn't necessarily guarantee we're going to beat them come playoff time, or vice versa. I'm a firm believer in that. I've been around this thing too long to see some teams go 0-4 and still win the series, or some teams go 3-4 and still win the series. So that part doesn't matter. It's just about how the first 2 games turned out against us.
So like a pride factor.
That's it.
All right.
To get OG back, I don't know how you've seen him in practice now.
Yeah, no, it's again at that size and with his skill set, you always miss that when he's out. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's in uniform. You got to go try to play the right way and get the win. But it's good to see him back on the floor for sure.
To go back to Jeremy, cognizant you have to be of lineups that you play alongside him to try to maximize and figure out what he's best at, or how he can best help the group, just because of the lack of shooting that he's shown so far.
Well, when we put our rotation together, I try to think of how the group on the floor fits for a lot of different reasons. Not just because this guy is a high-level shooter and this guy may not be a high-level shooter, but can this center play with this power forward? Can this guard play with this guard in terms of being able to bring the ball and handle against pressure? So there are a lot of different, does this group have enough guys that can go defensive rebounds? So I try to look at a lot of different combinations when it comes to putting them together, with the pros and cons of the individuals when it comes to putting these combinations together. And it'd be no different with Jeremy and or Jose, at the end of the day.
Jeremy, last 2 minutes of the game, you need somebody in there to cover someone, and not maybe get a lot of minutes, but a situation.
Well, again, I'm not sure exactly the minutes, but he for sure could be, if we need to get a stop, or if it's there's 3.2 seconds on the clock and they call a timeout. Well, Jeremy, OG, Josh, we may go with a bigger lineup that's extremely versatile, so we can switch things and not have to worry about boxing out and or rebounding down the stretch. So he could very well be in that mix.
With OG back and now Jeremy in the mix, how does this all? What does this mean for Mo?
Mo's had a good season so far, and as a young guy, I as you guys know, I'll play young guys,
right.
And I have played young guys in front of vets before, but I'm going to give Jeremy an opportunity, and he's similar to Tyler. Jose's a vet. He knows the league knows him, he knows the officials, and vice versa. So they're going to get an opportunity, but at the end of the day, I'm going to play who I think is best for us. And right now, Jeremy is new. He hadn't played for us, so I have to see rather quickly what we have in him before going into the playoffs.